right. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. As you may already know, Citcon hosts a new webinar on a monthly basis. So check out our other topics in our channel and make sure to join our next webinar next month too. I'm very excited about today's topic, and I am myself part of what I call the believers of digital currencies and the crypto world, generally speaking. I'm even more excited about welcoming a special guest today, Trevor, co-founder of Flexa and friend of mine, who is so inspiring and so knowledgeable about the crypto world. For those who are watching this webinar on YouTube, please remember to click on the subscribe button. And if you enjoy the webinar, please give us a like. Before we get into today's main topic, let me just introduce quickly Citcon to those who may be listening to us for the first time. Citcon is a US-based payment provider who is now providing services globally. We specialize in alternative payment methods such as Venmo, PayPal, Alipay, WeChat Pay, crypto and digital currencies, Mercado Pago, and many other mobile wallets. We do offer a wide range of integration into point-of-sale payment gateways, e-commerce platforms to allow merchants to accept those new payment methods without effort and at a low cost. We not only provide the technology, but also the settlement services to simplify the merchant's reconciliation too. So it's really just an all-in-one package. If you have any question about Citcon, feel free to reach out to me after this webinar or leave some question in the chat room or in the comments. And if you have any suggestions of other topics you'd like us to cover in the future, let us know too. Now, without further ado, let our special guest today, Trevor, introduce Flexa and how we are enabling digital currencies for merchants together, Citcon and Flexa. Trevor, how are you today?
Thanks so much, John. I'm doing well. I really appreciate that introduction and the context. We're really delighted to be a part of this webinar series. Flexa is a company focused on enabling a new type of digital payments for merchants all over the world. We help merchants accept digital currencies with no fraud, with zero chargebacks and at the lowest costs. And digital currencies, the way we look at them at least, include things like cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, but also other types of digital assets, loyalty assets, US dollar stablecoins, and so on and so forth. So we're really looking to help bring merchant payments into the 21st century, and we're doing it from an entirely merchant-centric perspective. We have found great partners in Citcon, and certainly in terms of Citcon's client base, we're really delighted to be able to share with you today some of what we've learned about digital currencies and how you can go about starting to accept them at your stores. So today we've put together an agenda, Citcon and Flexa. Where I'm coming from at Flexa, my background is about 10, 12 years now in payments, very focused on merchant payments, starting at the MIT Media Lab and American Express. Of course, we have some perspectives on payment trends, but I'd like to couch this in sort of the larger picture of what's happening in payments this year and beyond. We'll talk a little bit about what we've been building for the last 3 years, what we've learned along the way. We always focus on education first. We're not here to sell anything. If anything, we're here to inform first and foremost. So we'll talk a little bit about what digital currency is, what Flexa's approach looks like, how you enable that for your own stores and restaurants. And then to Jean's point, we'll focus on a question and answer session at the end if there's time. So I'd like to start by talking about where payments are going and couch this conversation in some of the broader payment trends we've been seeing at Flexa, which will hopefully help explain why we think digital currencies are particularly well suited for the current environment. So first and foremost, I'm sure all of you have been noticing this. We've seen an incredible growth in contactless payments, especially since the onset of the pandemic last year. And we see contactless payments both in terms of scan payments, which have been especially popular in Asian markets and are coming now to the US to a greater degree. Also NFC contactless payments. We think that these are generally safer, they're more durable, they're more versatile, there's higher customer satisfaction for these types of payments. And in addition to that, we're seeing a growth in e-commerce and remote checkout. I don't know if these payment instruments are all the way there yet, but certainly mobile ordering apps and courier delivery, especially in urban areas, are becoming more prominent in terms of the payment mix. I think a funny story I like to tell is when we started Flexa, we were very focused on the fact that 91% of commerce in the US was in brick and mortar, and that only 9% was really taking place in e-commerce. That has changed dramatically, certainly by double-digit percentage points since the onset of the pandemic, but e-commerce remote checkout also here to stay, and certainly growing and worth focus areas. More and more payments are happening away from the point of sale. They're happening on a mobile device, and we're seeing a trend toward a mobile device being used as a payment instrument. So not just the pays, but don't forget about the Starbucks app. Don't forget about different types of digital payments happening in terms of PayPal and Venmo. And that actually leans more toward this trend of person-centric or customer-centric payments. Instead of being attached to an account number or a specific payment card, we're seeing things wrapped up in the person. And I think that both of these have to do with the fact that we all carry mobile devices around with us every day, and a mobile device is always going to be more secure than a piece of plastic. A joke I like to make sometimes at in-person conferences is I'll offer my credit card and my phone to anyone who wants to go across the street and make a payment. And of course, everyone 10 out of 10 times choose to use my card because they'll certainly be able to do it. Whereas on the mobile device, we have things like biometrics, Face ID, Touch ID, you name it, that will enable these mobile devices to be far more secure forms of payment. And then finally, we're seeing this trend toward digital currencies. And at Flexa, we're paying especially close attention to digital currencies for the reasons that I'm about to describe, but mostly want to share with you today what we've learned along the way, why we think digital currencies are important to pay attention to, especially in the context of these larger payment trends, and also how digital currencies actually play a role in enabling contactless e-commerce or remote checkout experiences on mobile devices. So first, I'd like to talk a little bit about the growth and value of digital currencies. I think many of us are familiar with Bitcoin, Ethereum, perhaps. Digital currencies have been around for about 11, 12 years now. And ever since we have been tracking prices of digital currencies, the growth in the value of digital currencies has become more and more significant. It peaked at about $2.5 trillion about a month ago. And today, I think, is settled around 1.6 trillion. This is a graph of the growth in that value from 2016 to present. My perspective personally is that we've really only reached, let's say, the first % of adoption in terms of digital currencies. And we'll speak about that a little bit more later, but this is something that we expect to continue. So if you're not paying attention to this market, you're basically ignoring what is a 2 trillion and perhaps even larger opportunity in terms of US dollar value. And right now, a lot of that value is stuck. It's being used mostly as a speculative investing instrument. So there's some research that we can share and certainly is public, where about 94–95% of digital currency usage today is focused on this speculative investing use case. But we're also, of course, seeing peer-to-peer payments, global remittance, and finally merchant payments. I think this is particularly interesting because Bitcoin was invented to be a replacement for peer-to-peer payments. And of course, that opens up lots and lots of opportunities. The speculative investing use case is a good beachhead. It's a way for Bitcoin to sort of establish itself. But we've seen growth in these other three areas over the last few years, especially merchant payments. And Flex's focus is on the merchant payments piece. So as we see merchant payments today, about 1.2–1.4% of payments, we would expect that to become a larger share of digital currency usage over time. The last point I'll make in this quick introduction before we really get into what is a digital currency is that digital currencies are actually not for criminals. There's a common, I would say, misperception around digital currencies being used as a magnet for criminal activity. And the Drug Enforcement Administration, the National Security Agency have all come out now to say that, in fact, cash and oftentimes credit cards are more common vehicles for fraud, and for different reasons. So cash is a little bit less traceable than most other forms of payment. Certainly there are serial numbers if you can track them ahead of time. Digital currencies are very, very traceable. In fact, what makes digital currencies work so well is the fact that the blockchain is entirely public. And so in terms of tracing activity, I think there was a little bit of early awareness and adoption in terms of Bitcoin being something that criminals could use to abscond with funds. That is no longer the case. There was a recent news story of many millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin that were actually recovered by the FBI because they were using Bitcoin. And the FBI was able to trace the source of those funds. So even after adjusting for payment volume, we're seeing that criminal activity on Bitcoin is actually lower than every other payment instrument that's out there today. And this is just something where we've adapted I think it's the Washington Post Truth-O-Meter to try and highlight, this is not why we think digital currencies are important. And certainly they're not a safe haven for criminals. So if you have others who are telling you otherwise, we're always happy to help share some of what we've learned and share some materials that sort of support the more accurate point of view. Okay, so what is a digital currency? Well, a digital currency, and this is just our definition, it's fairly easy to store things digitally. But that's ultimately what a digital currency is designed to do. It's a way of taking value, maybe more specific than just information or data. We're storing something that's worth something of value, and we're storing it in a digital form. So we're not storing it on a piece of paper or in a bank vault. We're finding a way to digitally represent that value. And like I said a second ago, this is a fairly easy thing to wrap our heads around. We can store photos, we can store receipts, we can type our notes into an app or an email. It's easy to store data, but storing value actually requires a few special tricks. So if we want to store value digitally, we need to make sure that first, the value can't be copied. The value itself has to be impossible to copy because otherwise it would be possible to create duplicate value every time we make a transfer. That's what happens when you share an MP3, for example, or you share a photo with a friend. That can't happen if we want the value to stay worth something. We also need to make sure that we can agree on who owns the value at any given point in time. So it needs to be very easy to verify the ownership of that value. And of course, if we're going to use a digital system to do this, we need to make sure that those transfers are reliable and consistently available. We need to make sure the system doesn't go offline when we need it. And so a lot of this is what we use banks for today, which is absolutely true. And a funny theme of the first part of this presentation is that if the internet was invented sometime before credit cards, instead of the other way around, credit cards were invented in the 1950s, 1940s. The internet was really just an idea even as late as 1970. If the banks came together and tried to invent credit cards after the internet instead of before, they would have just invented digital currencies. And they didn't, unfortunately. And so here we are. And it happens that about 11 or 12 years ago, an anonymous software developer, or possibly a team of people who go by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, figured out how to store and transfer value digitally without trusting any banks. And the software they invented was called Bitcoin. And Bitcoin was pretty revolutionary for a couple of reasons. First, the idea that instead of passing around our sensitive account numbers, in order to move money, we would only ever pass around receipts. So there would be no sensitive account numbers in transit, only the signed receipts would be shared to the network. And literally that if I could create a receipt for a payment from my account, everyone else should actually trust that signed receipt more than they trust me or more than they trust my account numbers. So that was an innovation number one. And innovation number two is the idea that instead of trying to rely on a bank or another central authority in order to guarantee those receipts for us, because remember, we're only sharing the receipts, we would just copy the receipts themselves onto as many computers as possible. And what's particularly clever about that approach is that it opens up a few interesting second order effects, which is namely that we don't have to be as concerned with routing because the blockchain is replicated on every single node. It's truly a network. We can also devise methods of verifying good funds very, very quickly. There's a lot that opens up here when you start to believe in the idea that you can broadcast the receipts and proliferate them as frequently and as publicly as possible. Again, that gets back to the traceability that I was mentioning earlier. I want to compare interchange payments to digital currency payments because I think there are some interesting shortcomings of how we have built the interchange network that actually stem from this idea that we have to encrypt and transfer sensitive account details through a flow. So if we look at an interchange payment, these are some of the typical intermediaries who are helping process payment cards on behalf of merchants. And because there are so many intermediaries involved, a single payment, a single authorization really is a round trip process from one part of this flow all the way through and back. It's at least 2 seconds, especially when we're dealing with things like EMV cards. And that's just a limit of physics. We're not actually going to be able to speed that up in any meaningful way because we need to get from the payment card through the merchant pause all the way to the issuing bank and back in order to verify if funds exists against that account. Now on the blockchain, because we're dealing with these publicly signed and shared receipts, we actually can do this much, much more quickly. The distributed ledger is available and duplicated across as many nodes as possible. So it's going to be as close in the physical internet as possible to whatever mobile device someone is using to verify assets. And therefore, it's effectively real time. You could consider the blockchain to be a form of a cloud, where if I want to see how much money belongs to a particular Bitcoin account, I, a merchant, anyone can do that in effectively real time. And so this is where we start to think about how do we actually use that sort of a system in order to convey transactions. And this system has worked in the way I'm about to describe for basically the last 11 years. So to make a payment using Bitcoin, I sign a transaction on my computer with something called my private key. And that is going to generate that signed transaction receipt. Then I broadcast the receipt of that transaction to the network, in this case, the Bitcoin network. And computers running the Bitcoin software will then compete with one another in order to grab some of those latest unconfirmed receipts, package them together into something called a block, and then record them all in this public ledger for everyone to see. And that public ledger we call the Bitcoin blockchain. When these computers win the block, when they win writing that block to the blockchain, they actually get a little bit of the Bitcoin value for themselves, and that's their payment for helping to operate the network. And then from that point forward, that transaction is considered what we call once confirmed. And every next block that gets written on top of it adds an extra confirmation that the value has changed hands. In a way, it's like if we were all racing to write a book one page at a time, and the words we can use to write the book are all of these receipts that people are broadcasting to the network. Any of us can grab those words to help write the next page, but whoever finishes the page first gets to put the page on the top of the stack, at which point we all start over again with the receipts that are left and we try and create the next page of the story. And I really like that analogy because it also speaks to the security of Bitcoin. Because if we keep stacking pages on top of pages, the literal weight of those pages makes it much harder to change pages deeper down in the stack. And in the language of Bitcoin, this is literally called gravity. It's how the network protects itself from someone trying to cook the books on transactions that happened a long time ago. You could think of how a bank stores payments as being something a little bit different and more like an Excel spreadsheet. It's very easy to change row A, column 1 of an Excel spreadsheet, and it's just as easy to change row ZZZ, column 1519. But with the Bitcoin blockchain, time is a factor. And so older blocks are actually much, much harder computationally to change. And as a testament to how all this works, in the entire 12-year history of Bitcoin, the network has never been hacked, not even once. And in fact, the reason you hear about Bitcoin being used in ransomware attacks or in internet hacks, whenever, let's say, someone takes over a hospital, it's specifically because once Bitcoin moves, it moves. You can't actually call up your bank and have them reverse the transfer because there's no bank involved in the flow. The transaction itself is happening in the open, and there is really no way to reverse those older blocks. So I know that portion got pretty technical at times. Thankfully, you don't really need to know how Bitcoin works, although if you remember the paper stacking analogy, that'll get you a little bit of the way there. All you need to know about how Bitcoin or digital currencies work as payment instruments are two things. One, that it's a push-only form of payment instrument, so transactions can't be reversed, they can only be redone in the opposite direction. And two, Bitcoin payments are actually exceptionally secure and very, very hard to refute or to spoof, especially when you're looking at transactions that have happened earlier in time. I think it would surprise you today, perhaps, to learn that there are more than 9,000, sometimes 10,000, depending on which source you refer to, digital currencies in circulation. So we invented these, 11, 12 years ago, and now there are 10,000 different versions. I think that's kind of impressive. As I mentioned before, they're worth about $1.6 trillion today. And some examples are here. One includes the DM token, which is a project that Facebook has been developing and used to be called the Libra project. It's a US dollar stablecoin that they are looking to deploy within the Facebook ecosystem. Another example is the Celo blockchain. Celo is a carbon neutral blockchain that is a fork of something called Ethereum. And Celo is a blockchain that's very, very focused on developing countries, but also making it very easy for individuals to send money back and forth between mobile devices. There is a token project called Terra and Terra Luna, and this is a project out of South Korea that is focused specifically on e-commerce transactions, but also is expanding to in-store payments as well. I think $1 billion was transferred over the Terra network last year in South Korea, specifically in the e-commerce context, and they have relationships with a number of the large banks in South Korea. Stateside, we see JP Morgan working on their own intrabank settlement token called JPM Coin. We also see a number of different companies working on versions of US dollar stablecoins. such as the Gemini dollar, USD coin, or even a stablecoin called DAI. Some of these are backed by actual US dollars in a bank account, and the design is to make US dollars in a bank account more compatible with digital currency networks. Others are completely algorithmically generated pegs against US dollar, which is kind of interesting because it's really speaking to the idea of money as code. And really there is no dollar backing a DAI deposit. It's more something that we all agree algorithmically devises something close enough. Finally, the country of China has been working on the digital renminbi, which is a token that is backed by the Chinese yuan in a number of cities where this has been piloted across China. The digital renminbi is something we're paying especially close attention to because it's a state-sanctioned digital currency, or a central bank digital currency that's starting to gain a foothold. And we think this is really especially interesting because it would be much, much easier to use the ECNY, or digital renminbi token, internationally than having to deal with foreign currency exchange. And I'll just note that when I gave a version of this presentation a couple of years ago, there was no ECNY token. About 6 months ago, the Chinese government gave away $3 million worth of these tokens to residents of Shenzhen as a pilot test. But I'll also add that about a year and a half ago, when I first gave a version of this presentation, the total value of all digital currency was about 250 billion US. Today it's more than 4 times. Well, today it's more than 7 times that, and it's certainly peaked at a higher value as well. So digital currencies are definitely something worth paying attention to, but they don't have to be obvious as digital currencies. Here's some screenshots of how the DM token is integrated into the Facebook Novi application. And as you can see, it feels pretty straightforward. This is like dealing with dollars. It's not necessarily being surfaced as a DM or a Bitcoin or something curious. And it's our hypothesis that over time, most of the payment rails will actually migrate to some form of digital currency based or distributed ledger technology based system behind the scenes, and that consumers will be, let's say, none the wiser. Importantly, consumers don't need to know what digital currencies are in order to spend it. And apps like Novi can make digital currencies look and work just like a regular old account balance. So at the end of the day, the big takeaway here, I think, is that digital currencies are much more secure than traditional money. They're here to stay. They're not going away anytime soon. And we, as merchants and as payments payments executives, let's say, we need to start thinking about ways to prepare for what will become a much larger transition to digital currencies over time. And so now I'm going to pivot a little bit and speak to Flexa's approach to digital currency payments. And I think that in terms of accepting these digital currencies, you have a number of options. You can take payments natively using something called on-chain payments or on-chain payment plugins. So you could build your own infrastructure to accept Bitcoin payments, and you could secure your Bitcoin wallet through your IT security department, like Tesla has done. This requires coordination across the entire merchant organization. You need to work with your compliance teams. You need to work with your accountants. You need to work with perhaps your payments and even your marketing teams to try and figure out how to secure these digital currency payments in a way that is very, very foreign to how we secure credit and debit card payments today. Bitcoin actually offers open source software for you to be able to accept cryptocurrency yourself. The Bitcoin core developers have developed this and published it on GitHub. BTC Pay is a common library that wraps a bunch of ways of accepting Bitcoin together into some really easy to use software if you want to take on-chain payments. Another option is to use an online exchange like Coinbase Commerce or BitPay. These are very simple plugins for native acceptance, especially online. And if you'd like to take Bitcoin, you can, but if you'd like to have that converted to US dollars, that's also very easy to do. And these are, again, plugins that would enable you to accept digital currency with minimal effort, but also have a little bit more flexibility on the back end in terms of how you receive them. The third option that obviously I'm a little bit biased, but I think is perhaps the most merchant friendly, is to use Flexa. And so you can accept payments from Flexa enabled applications. These are seamless SDKs that essentially flow through your current acceptance infrastructure. This is digital acceptance at the lowest cost with absolutely zero fraud guaranteed. And we work to make it easy so that you don't have to worry about really anything. And here are some of the things that we work hard to make sure you don't have to worry about. We don't use traditional payment rails, so we don't actually help you accept credit or debit cards, but that enables us to be the first payments company that truly puts the merchant first. So we guarantee zero fraud. There are no chargebacks or reversals when you accept a payment with Flexa. You also get what we call guaranteed finality at time of payment. So within about 300 milliseconds, we can offer a payment authorization that will never be reversed unless you as the merchant initiate a reversal. And so that's something that's kind of exciting because you can start processing whatever you'd like after that payment authorization, whether it's order fulfillment or letting the customer walk out of the store. You don't have to worry about blockchain settlement or anything complicated. We're fully BSA AML compliant. We put a lot of effort into our compliance footprint and our money services business registrations. We are a registered money transmitter in several states. We have worked with state governments who don't regulate virtual currency to make them aware of our business models. We're a participant in a special program in Hawaii as one of the first 12 companies who are able to conduct virtual currency transactions in Hawaii. On top of all of this, we're at lower cost than any other form of payment, around, well, let's say less than 1%. So we aim to cut your acceptance cost dramatically versus interchange. And more recently, we've announced that we have erased all of our historical carbon emissions. So we're actually the first carbon neutral and carbon negative payments network. And we've invested in some forefront carbon removal technologies because we believe that if you're thinking about accepting payments, especially digital currency payments, you shouldn't have to worry about the carbon footprint that you're potentially taking on. And to be honest, payments generally are a very carbon intensive thing for a company to do, but I think the blockchain has also been getting a lot of attention recently as being particularly electricity intensive. So we've tried to make that, again, a non-concern when it comes to digital currency acceptance. Here are some of the merchants who accept Flexa today. So you can walk into a Nordstrom, a Lowe's, a GameStop, a Bed Bath & Beyond. You can spend digital currencies with Flexa. We accept these different digital currencies and support them for payments on our network. There are digital dollars, which are some of those US dollar stablecoins I was referring to earlier. Also digital tokens that have different purposes in different networks, and more what I would call native cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Litecoin, Zcash. But we really believe that digital currency is just the beginning. So we've built our infrastructure to support any type of digital asset, whether you are interfacing with Flexa using a cryptocurrency wallet, you are interfacing with someone holding their airline miles in an airline app, hotel loyalty points, banking apps. Digital currency really is just the beginning. So as a quick overview of what we're talking about here, the fastest transaction type that we really believe is available anywhere, 300 milliseconds or less. The payouts are guaranteed. There are zero chargebacks and no reversals. All of the customers who are using Flexa today are using digital currency apps. So typically a merchant is going to see incremental customers when using something like Flexa and net new spend. And we work very, very hard to reduce complexity to zero and make overhead very, very minimal. We also bundle all this together into a really, really clean user experience that's simple, fast, like I mentioned before, contactless, and uses the biometrics of the mobile device. We have a number of different payment methods, but we're going to share a quick video that demonstrates how this currently works today in one of our partner apps, which is the Gemini wallet. Let's hope this audio comes through. I was just informed that the audio is not coming through on the Zoom, so I'm going to go ahead and try and narrate this. Sorry about that. This is the Gemini application. You could see that when we opened it, the app scanned using Face ID to perform sort of a biometric analysis of, in this case, Eric's face. He opened up the Gemini app. He's browsing through his portfolio. He has about $760 worth of spending power. He can either transfer this money from maybe this wallet to another cryptocurrency wallet. He could transfer this money to a friend or maybe even a family member, or he can use the Gemini app to pay in stores. And in the Gemini app, we have the market tab, the earn tab, the portfolio tab, and the pay tab. Gemini app, in fact, is sort of structured as a newfangled bank account. And what's really, really exciting about how Gemini is starting to look at this whole ecosystem is their ability to surface US dollar interest-bearing accounts, all using digital currencies. So here we're looking at the Pay tab. The Gemini Pay tab surfaces the assets that are stored inside of the mobile app. In this case, it is displaying an Ether balance that Eric holds with Gemini. So this is $116.65 of available Ether. That is a quote that Flexa provides based on the Ether balance. So as a merchant interfacing with the Flexa network and interfacing with any of the Flexa wallets, you will see US dollars flow through to your till, or you can take digital assets if you like. We can get into that a little bit later. But for the most part, the consumer is used to the fact that these assets will have different rate quotes. And so they are surfacing their Bitcoin or their Ether or their Dogecoin. And they're using that to generate something that would be compatible with your point of sale. So here someone has selected Ether. They've tapped on Regal. Regal is one of our partner merchants. And in order to pay at Regal, you would present a QR code. We generate this code inside of the mobile app. This code is ready to scan and represents a real-time payment authorization that will be worth $116.64. And that code is a one-time use authorization. So anyone who uses this Flex code or even takes a screenshot of the Flex code that's on my screen right now is not going to be able to use it. It's only going to be useful for that one specific exchange rate quote that we generated at Flexa, and it's only going to be useful for that short period of time that it's displayed on the user's screen. So that was an example of what we call a Flex code authorization. And that is a payment where we have taken the user's Ethereum, we have essentially instantly created the way for a customer to use that Ethereum inside of a store like Regal or Lowe's or Baskin Robbins. And that dollar value is now represented to the merchant as good funds and will never be reversed against the merchant. We work with a number of different partners here in the US. I already showed the slide of some of our merchant clients. We try to make this all as seamless as possible. So when we think about how Flexa and Citcon are working together, what Flexa is handling is the consumer funding, the exchange rates, the conversion of these assets from digital currencies into another form of desired payout currency. We also handle the payment experience. So we have developed these really bespoke, but also very easy to integrate SDKs that can be dropped into a number of different cryptocurrency wallets and in the future, other types of wallets. We handle all of this experience, and then we push an authorization in real time through to your Citcon integration. And then Citcon receives settlement from us after we've exchanged these digital currencies and flows through all alongside your existing reporting and through your existing accounting relationship. So we do try to make this as seamless as possible, and it is just as easy as flipping a switch. But in order to speak to how you would go about enabling digital currency acceptance, I'm going to throw it over to Jean at Citcon.
Thank you, Trevor. First of all, thank you very much. I think that was amazing. You know, I think I took about 100 hours of class at Berkeley about cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. And probably I think I should just have listened to you for a half hour. And that would have been same result. Anyway, just amazing. Thank you so much. It's very clear, at least to me, and I hope to the rest of the audience. I think, you know, if there are any questions on what Trevor explained, also feel free to leave a question in the chat room, and I will try to go over all the questions after we finish the presentation. But thank you. It's really cool. And again, every time I talk to you, I just feel I learn something new. In French, we say "I'll sleep less stupid tonight," which is happens very often for me.
Pleasure is ours.
So yeah, actually, I like that you mentioned you know, the customer payment experience, and you guys have done a really great job really making this simple for the user. If I'm using Gemini myself, and it was just very easy, very simple. I just, you know, it's a no-brainer. I don't even need to have any training as a consumer on how to enable that QR code. So, you know, hats off for that, because it's not always easy. to manage that, and especially to make it available in so many different apps. So yeah, really great job about this. Now, how we make this easy on our side, right, on the Citcon side, we try to make it easy for the merchant, right, the store associate who actually are going to be facing that customer, right? So if Trevor takes his Gemini app, or I think that was Eric actually who was doing the demo. So if Eric goes to a store and wants to, a Citcon enabled store and wants to pay with his Gemini app, so we've seen how he's going to do it, right? He's going to generate a QR code within the Gemini app, select the payment method, but how does it really work on the merchant side? So I'm going to try to go through the point of sale. You can see on the bottom left corner, that's a store associate point of sale. So obviously it's not going to look exactly like this, but we just made like 4 different tenders, right? So you just go through the usual checkout process, right? You scan the t-shirt and the pair of shoes that you're buying, and then you're like, how you like to pay: credit card, cash, check. I don't know if that still exists, or QR payments, for example. And so here, the digital currency is really part of the Citcon QR tender, right? Because we believe that there should be only one unique tender for all these alternative payment methods, right? A store associate should not have a double PhD in payments and in the digital currencies to be able to sell and simply accept a payment from people. So it's really just all behind that one tender that Citcon is creating on the point of sale. Then the store associate, clicks on that one. At that moment, they simply just need to grab their scanner, or they might be using an iPad as MPOS, for example. Really, the only thing they need to do is scan that QR code. So really, the same payment experience as you would have with an Alipay or a Venmo transaction, right? And in that case, it's not a Venmo QR code or an Alipay QR code; it's a Flexa QR code that you need to scan. You scan that. Trevor did a good job at explaining, how fast that transaction is being authorized. So it's really, 300 milliseconds, boom, done. Transaction is authorized, confirmed. That cannot be reversed unless you as a merchant decide to reverse that transaction. So once you do that transaction, that's it, right? You have confirmation that you will get that money. Now, obviously, right, confirmation is completed. The point of sale will tell you the transaction was successful, is going to close that transaction. The consumer also gets on their phone a confirmation that the payment went through. So it's really the two sides will get that confirmation, which is very simple. So again, right, it's one tender, click on it, the customer shows a QR code, the store associate scan that QR code, payment is done, both the store associate and the consumer can see that payment was successful, very happy, and Eric can walk out with his t-shirt and his new shoes. So I think there are obviously a lot of different ways to do that. That's really the most efficient, easiest way to do it. That's one of the most common integration that we've built at Citcon, and we've built a lot of different integrations. Also, not only for point of sale and payment gateways for in-store, but also for e-commerce. So on the e-commerce side, how does that work? It's a lot of people think, oh my god, like e-commerce, how are you going to handle that, right? With Bitcoin and Ethereum, and everything is really made super simple by Flexa and by our plugin. What we're doing really at Citcon is we've built all these plugin and cartridge on those e-commerce platform, and we're just adding Flexa as part of the multiple tenders that we're adding. So let's imagine you use Citcon on your Salesforce Commerce Cloud website, and you already accept WeChat Pay and Alipay, for example. Now you want to start accepting digital currencies, well, you just have a new tender. So you can see the user, let's say they're on their phone, right, browsing your website. They're going to get to their checkout page. Obviously, they still have the option to pay with credit cards. They probably have maybe a PayPal button, and then you're going to have another button for pay with Flexa. They click on it. Now you're going to have the option to select what app you want to pay with, because Flexa is enabled not just in one app, but into multiple apps. So here I can see we got Gemini or Speden. So let's say if I'm Eric, right, I'm using my Gemini account, so I can just directly click on Gemini, and I'm going to use my digital currencies that are held in my Gemini account. It's really, really simple. It's one click, you choose a wallet you want to pay with, then you confirm. That's a screenshot number 3. You confirm the payment is done, and you go back to the website and you're done. So it's a very, very seamless. There is no, no card information. Like sometimes what I hate is I need to enter my card number. Sometimes I save it in my browser, but it still asks me to put my CVV number. It's always a hassle, and I don't know how countless baskets that I just canceled just because I didn't have my card right next to me. So this really makes it very simple, because everybody has their phone next to them all the time. And I don't care what you say. I know that even when you go, take a 5-minute break, I know you're still bringing your phone. So even at that time, you have it, but you may not have your credit card. So that's really very simple way. So where is that, where have we integrated? If you're a merchant, you probably think, okay, great. How do I know that that's going to work on my point of sale or on my e-commerce platform? So these are some of the partners that we already integrate with. Some of directly at the point of sale. Some are payment gateways partners. We also are directly into some payment terminals, and of course on e-commerce platform. We keep expanding. So today, as of we're June 17th, 2021 today, those are most of some of our biggest partners. So if you're using, Microsoft Dynamics or Xstore, Cegid, right, KWI, Toshiba, you can actually already accept those payment methods, and not only just the digital currencies, but all the other, wallets that we offer, the Venmo, the PayPal, the Alipay, etc., that I already mentioned. Same thing, right? Via some of the gateway partners. I think I did see some of our partners actually today. So thank you also for joining. I hope I didn't forget anybody's logo. And also same on the e-commerce platform. So e-commerce can be fairly complicated. Let's say you're using Shopify. It literally takes 2 minutes to download the Citcon plugin to enable all the alternative payment methods on Shopify. So that makes it very, very simple. Now, once you've got all this integrated and implemented, that's really more an IT project, and it's very simple. There is no development to do. Now, what happens? Okay, I made that transaction. Great. How do I get my money? All right, that's what the CFO is going to ask. So get a great news for all the CFOs today. It's very simple. So the left side, it looks pretty complicated, and that's what Citcon manages, right? So you don't have to care everything you see on the left side. What you really care about is the right side. But we're basically going to combine all those different wallets, all those different funds, all those different transactions that are happening at your point of sale or on your website. We're going to put it all together, and we're going to send that to your bank account. And that includes, you can see here, all the digital assets from the different apps, the Gemini app, the Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, and that's going to go through Flexa. Then it's going to go through Citcon. We're going to combine it with WeChat Pay, Alipay, Venmo, PayPal, etc. And that's going to become one streamlined user experience and reconciliation for you. So if you remember the point of sale slide, there was just one QR tender. So you get one one tender. You're going to get one settlement and one reconciliation. So it's really just making it all this very simple for you, for your store associate. Your store associate don't even need to know if they're scanning a Flexa QR code or a Venmo QR code. They just need to know they're scanning a QR code, and that's it. And payment goes through. That's how it should be. Same way with credit card. Right? They're not supposed to know if they're if they're accepting a Visa or a MasterCard. They just know it looks like a card, so it should be the credit card button. Same concept. So once you enable Flexa payments with Citcon, you're going to get a risk-free exposure to the fastest growing form of payments. Right? Let's be honest. If you can, anyone on the audience can tell me something that is growing faster than digital currency today, I don't know. I'll invite you to my apartment in France. It's a beautiful town where I live. It's a guaranteed zero fraud, right? So let's be honest. Chargeback are it's that kind of crazy when you think about it. In 2021, you still have chargebacks. And this is because, as Trevor mentioned, right, the credit card system was invented in the 40s or 50s. I actually think it was the 50s, but I could be wrong. So probably we need to check that, Trevor, on Wikipedia later on. So zero fraud. So not only, right, you're expanding, right, your customer audience, you're also being really cool because you're accepting those new forms of payment, but you're also reducing your cost, your payment acceptance cost, because you get lower transaction fees, but also you're reducing your chargeback. So overall, right, it's a win-win. There's nothing to lose at all there. You get access to new apps and currencies as they come online. So it's really, you don't have to think, oh, wait, Dogecoin is being popular now. I need to update all my network and to be able to accept Dogecoin. No, that's Trevor's job to accept Dogecoin so that all the other apps can accept it and we can enable it through our API, which is just turn on and turn off. So it's very, very simple, very scalable. It's going to bring incremental volume. Right? If I'm sure some of the some of people who are really into digital currencies, who own the digital currencies, might already be your customers. But let's be honest, a lot of them are probably not. You are able now to touch a very specific community. It's that you're really not able to reach out to in normal times. Now having the power to accept their money and to speak their language, you're going to attract new people, right? And you're going to get new loyal customers. So that's actually not just being cool and accepting Bitcoin. It's actually really, there's an actual business case here for your brand. And again, right, just minimum cost and lift. So we just recommend you to turn it on as soon as you can. So I just want to thank you all very much, right, for attending today. I want to thank especially the Flexa team, represented today by Trevor, but there are many other people who worked behind to help organize this webinar and try to present as much information in a concise way and a very simple way. So hopefully you are able to learn a lot. If you have more questions, we're always here.